Or you can say it louder than that. This is my Bible.
This is my Bible.
I am who it says I am. I can do what it says I can do. I'm a believer and not a doubter. I'm a doer and not just a hearer. And my life is always made better when I hear the life-giving, life-changing, liberating Word of God. Because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. There's a word for us today to be found in the Gospel according to St. Luke. The Gospel according to St. Luke. Go to the last chapter of Luke. For those of you that don't know how many chapters it has, that is chapter 24. Chapter 24. And let us begin reading at verse number 49. Luke chapter 24, verse 49 through 53. When you have it, say amen. Amen. If you don't have it, say, hold on just a minute. All right, let's read. Behold, I send the promise of my Father upon you, but tarry in the city of Jerusalem until you are endued with power from on high. And he led them out as far as Bethany. He lifted up his hands and blessed them. Now it came to pass, while he blessed them, that he was parted from them and carried up into heaven. And they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy. And they were continually in the temple, praising and blessing God. Amen. Repeat these words after me. And they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and were continually in the temple, praising and blessing God. Amen. Turn around, shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, oh neighbor, wake up and lead change. Look that pretty girl in the eyes, son.
Oh neighbor.
Amen. Smile at her. Turn on the other side. Say, neighbor, oh neighbor, wake up and lead change. It is my assignment. I'll preach 4 times today. This is my 3rd sermon. I have another one at another message at 3 o'clock. And when God gave me my assignment a month ago, my assignment was to preach 4 sermons that focus on this title: Wake Up and Lead Change. Wake up and lead change. For those of you that are members of our congregation, you know that 2015 is the year of Great Awakening. Just touch your neighbor and say, this is the year of Great Awakening.
This is the year of Great Awakening.
And for those of you who are taking notes and will do research when you get home, or do a Google search while I'm preaching, you will understand and know that in American history, there have been 2 major Great Awakenings. The first Great Awakening was in the 1700s. A Great Awakening is a movement of faith that has social, political, and economic implications for the nation. A Great Awakening is more than a revival. Let me say that again. A Great Awakening is more than a revival. A Great Awakening is a total reformation of family. It is a total reformation of cities, counties, states, and indeed nations. For those who study revival, in the 19th and 20th centuries, the greatest revival that the world has ever seen was the Welsh, W-E-L-S-H revival. But national revivals only last for a period of a few years. Reformations are what cause great awakenings. The two great awakenings called the First and Second Great Awakening, started as revivals. The First Great Awakening started in the mid-1700s, and it began with a sermon by Jonathan Edwards entitled "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God." And out of that revival, a reformation started with preachers like George Whitefield out of London. It is when the Wesleys, John and Charles, came to America. A reformation started that caused and laid the seed work for the Revolutionary War and America breaking away from the bondage of England. The Second Great Awakening happened in the mid-1840s. It too started as a revival. One of the great revivalists of the Second Great Awakening was Charles G., middle initial G, Finney. His lectures on revival are still being read and still being taught to this very day in 2015. But this revival started the Reformation. It was when Frederick Douglass became famous for the abolitionist movement. It was when Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and the white brothers and sisters who participated in the abolitionist movement began to get a foothold right before the Civil War. Every great awakening affects a nation spiritually, politically, economically. Out of the Second Great Awakening started the movement for women to vote. Out of the Second Great Awakening came the movement for temperance, to stop the grip that alcohol had on the communities. Every great awakening is a combination of revival plus reformation. Some historians are saying that in 1955 in Birmingham, that was the beginning of the Third Great Awakening, that the Civil Rights Movement was the Third Great Awakening in America. It was a time when the Civil Rights Movement, unlike the movement in Ferguson, unlike the movement in New York, those movements were birthed in church. They were birthed in prayer meetings. They were birthed and fueled by churches that were having political impact as well as spiritual impact and financial impact. Martin Luther King was the voice of the Third Great Awakening. And because he was that voice, he had to be assassinated. If I had time, I would talk to you about the fact that the reason the media talks about Dr. King and his great dream is they want you to forget that Martin did not die after the March in Washington in 1964. He continued to make many great speeches and sermons. He became dangerous when he began to focus on the redistribution of wealth. He became dangerous when he talked about, there's a new book out that is talking about the opportunity gap. And because America and all over the world, there is a great economic disparity growing in our nation, that poor children in America and all over the world are facing an opportunity gap. That opportunity gap comes from the fact that when Martin Luther King in 1967 announced he was against the war in Vietnam and that he wanted redistribution of wealth so that every American had the right to health care, a right to an education, a right to affordable education and housing, he became dangerous, and they assassinated Martin Luther King, not because of his dream of little white boys and white girls walking together in hand, but because he challenged the economic system and was causing people to wake up and say, how can some people have a whole lot while a few people have nothing at all? Every great awakening has a political side, an economic side, but the foundation is spiritual.